Hi, this is Eternal King bringing you another LOR video today. I just recently created a tier list for all of the champions in LOR, and I thought it might make for interesting content to go through all of them. So starting off with Elder Dragon, Elder Dragon is Eddie tier, right? So it really shouldn't be a surprise that Eddie is the only card in LOR that essentially acts like a champion with his boons despite never seeing the light of day. There is not a single card, other champion in LOR, that essentially does something so powerful and without ever needing to hit the board. Period, full stop. And because he is, like a 10 mana card, I understand that the devs wanted him to have an impact prior to him hitting the board, but for that reason he is one of the strongest champions in the game, and he is an auto one inclusion, and almost like a ton of decks people just jam one copy because he is so powerful as a one-off. So he is Eddie tier. He is his own tier. When it comes to him being an actual champion, he's pretty meh. He's pretty meh in terms of what he actually does, like him being an actual card and leveling and I cannot be stopped and all that stuff. I haven't seen an Eddie flip in so long. I can't tell you how long it's been since I've seen an Eddie flip. He essentially is a non-champion in that sense. It really is just the boons. But he is Eddie tier, just for the boons alone. It's just this stuff, right? It's just like I grant my 6 drops Deathless, and I grant my 6 drops Challenger, or I grant my 6 drops Fearless sometimes, or Impact, or whatever the case may be, healing in the burn matchup. So he's Eddie tier. No surprise there. So the next tier is running away with games. So we have Annie. Annie is exceptionally good at running away with games, requiring hard answers, and pings usually will not suffice. So you essentially need to be on things like Quietus, or just hard removal solutions, hate spikes, a lot of Shadow Isles removal, mystic shots, things of that nature. And Avalanche is going to be too slow. And any good Annie player who is confident in their ability to pilot Annie Jhin, like I am, will essentially always have flipped Annie. Like flipped Annie is basically always happening. It's never not happening. Even in like slow roll scenarios, you can usually make it happen too. Annie's exceptionally powerful. And if you don't just want to play Annie Jhin, she has a landmark that is all her own with Tibulk. So you can run a Tibulk deck, and she's actually almost as good in that. So again, she has, top tier deck, and then, slightly more, less powerful deck that is she still runs away games with. Next up is Akshan. Akshan is exceptionally good at running away with games. Of course, you put weapon on him, and then you just grappling hook spam, right? So you stick a weapon on him, and then he gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and he grows and he grows and he grows, and he's one of the only 2-mana champions in the game that works that way, and also guarantees like infinite card draw and infinite strike potential and spell shield, and all these scary things all go on one card. So Akshan is, I'm labeled them by letter, but basically I'm saying that he runs away with games, which means he is at the toppest of tiers. He is an S tier champion. Eddie is not in a tier because he's barely a champion. He is just Eddie, and he's Eddie tier. Next up we have Azir. So Azir is exceptionally powerful, and he runs away with games. The fact that his stat line is so exceptionally difficult to deal with is very, very problematic, and it's very easy as well to say stick him onto a husk, and then all of a sudden he has 6 life, and there is like no removal on curve that I can think of that is going to deal with something that has 6 life, and is summoning tokens, and then those tokens get bigger, and then he gets bigger, and then sometimes he's like an elusive Azir, and he's just like, again, he's just as scary as Akshan in the right deck. And you're rallying with tokens, and you're rallying with tokens, and you're blade dancing, and you're blade dancing. Next up, I have Jinx. So again, there is quite this a little bit surprising. I would call this like a newer addition, but recently a Jinx deck has become popularized. I had a rule that like only one champ per deck archetype. So like for example, if it was like Jinx Lulu, I'm picking one of those 2 champions, and then I'm dropping the other one down a tier. So I'm saying that Jinx can run away with games very easily. She's exceptionally easy and reliable to level as we get more and more discard tools and more discard tech. She only gets more reliable at what she does, and Rocket, Super Mega Death Rocket for 1 mana is actually pretty good. So I would say in terms of her ability to run away with games and also the draw and everything like that, she's quite strong, especially in that one deck that is meta for Eternal, and I believe there's also a standard variant that is meta. So Jinx pretty good. Next up we have Teemo. So again, I know you would say that like Teemo doesn't run away with games. A good Teemo player does run away with games. I just recently talked about a hard counter deck that was destroying Eddie, that was winning like 80% of games, and it was doing so with Frostbite Teemo, right? And it was being exceptionally powerful. And so that's just Teemo power. That's Teemo running away with games. He's good on curve. He's good slow rolling as like the last card you play. So you're like, oh, here's a 1 mana card. Here's a 2 mana card. And then each time you're passing priority, and you're hoping that your opponents are running out of stuff to deal with the Teemo that you play as your last play. He's good with extra draw, so things like Temple. He's good with stuff like that because you're drawing more, and then the Teemo is practically going to be 0 mana. So yeah, Teemo runs away with games, 100%. The next one I'm going to pick out is Aphelios. I think Aphelios can absolutely run away with games in terms of what he does. Again, just like Calibrum, Gravitum, Crescendum, and you just go through this over and over and over again. And basically, Victor Aphelios, which is a deck that I'm not good at playing personally, but it's basically a deck that does absolutely nothing, and it's just winning off of Aphelios' ability to run away with games. There's nothing in that deck that is good other than Aphelios, and Aphelios is just hard carrying a stall shell, basically, and that's the power of that champion. Next up is Lux. So Lux can absolutely run away with games. She generates lasers for every 6 mana spell, and so that's exceptionally powerful from a removal perspective. I don't think I have to stick on this one too long. She's in the best control deck in the game, or one of the best control decks in the game. Next up we have Seraphine. Seraphine's a nice sneaky one. So Seraphine absolutely runs away with games, and basically, you know, she's good on curve, and then you get a free, for whatever reason, she always pulls a 2 mana ping off of her random card, or she always pulls something good because that's just how RNG works. So she's great on summon, and then later when you play her again when she's leveled, after she stopped the aggro from coming in, then she runs away with the game very effectively. Next up is Hecarim. So most ephemeral decks have been buffed, so Hecarim was buffed to be more effective thanks to the new story card, and Azir Aurelia was buffed to be more effective thanks to their new story card. So again, Hecarim absolutely runs away with games. It's just one of those cards where it's like, do you have the answer on 6? If you don't have the answer on 6, then Hecarim's going to destroy you. Set can absolutely run away with games. It's another case of like where I don't think that like Karma Set is like a good deck per se, but Set is so powerful in terms of what he does with showstoppers that he just like carries that stall list. It's another case of like similar to Aphelios, where it's just like, here's my stall shell that isn't really doing anything and is just kind of confusing to play against, and then all of a sudden Set just like blows you out of the water with infinite value, thanks to coins and showstoppers and duplicating coins and showstoppers with Karma. It's a weird deck, but it's very powerful. And then finally we have TF. So again, TF Temple being very similar to the cards that I mentioned before, like Aphelios and Set, where they are control cards that have the power to essentially just carry the game by themselves, just with their built-in level up kit. So you play TF, and then you play Temple, and then if they don't remove the Temple, like snap remove the Temple, then you just win. If they do snap remove the Temple, then depending on how you built your list, you might be, you might be fragile or you might be stable into that play pattern. But either way, it's not TF's fault if Temple gets removed. He's just, he will win if it happens. If the Temple sticks, he will win. Other cards that I think are pretty strong. So that's it in terms of runs away with games. So I kept my S tier pretty low to the ground. Next up we have Elise, and I'm just going to start naming these out faster because it's going to take too much time. Elise is kind of a problem. She's kind of a problem when she's not leveled, and she's kind of a problem when she is leveled, right? So spiders, or those spiders now have fearsome, and then you play, you buff all your spiders to 3/3s using the Freljord card, and all of them have fearsome, and like it is kind of a problem. Elise is definitely kind of a problem. I believe, now this is just my own personal opinion, but I believe that Riven, it's kind of a problem, just based on my own rankings personally. I think that in the matchups where she doesn't get snap removed, she just almost has the power to run away with games, but she's not quite there because she's such an easy target in many respects. but she has similar power potential, right? I think if Blade of Exile was focus speed, she would be S tier. But this is, good card design from the LOR dev saying that, like, okay, well, you either get the open swing off of jamming her with all the fragments, or you can, like, discard the fragments with Get Exciteds or what have you and discard value, or you slow roll the Blade of Exile. You don't get both. So that's the only thing that says, like, she's kind of a problem, but she's not like S tier or anything. Then we have Lulu. I think Lulu's kind of a problem, just with, like, Flame Chompers, right? Turning Flame Chompers that are discarded for free into 4/4s is definitely kind of a problem in my opinion. Next up we have, if it wasn't for specifically his kit, I would say that he would be much stronger, but it is Shen. So I think Shen is kind of a problem, just in terms of what he does. He's just, like, right below that tier of, like, running away with games. But what he does is exceptionally powerful. He comes down with barrier, he gives things barrier. Those things can have double attack, and then there's all sorts of nasty, like, combos you can potentially pull off with Shen in different shells that are pretty strong. So I think Shen is actually kind of a problem. I'm never, like, happy to see someone play a Shen. It is always like, oh, okay, well, now I have to deal with this. Next up, we have Taric. So I think Taric is kind of a problem, and it is Rally Taric. So again, standard players won't know what I'm talking about with a lot of this stuff, but basically Taric has the ability to slap a Rally on him when you don't have the attack token, and then he duplicates the Rally effect, and he gets barrier as well. So you slap barrier on him, and it's a Rally effect, and then he gives the Rally and the barrier to another character. So you get to rally twice when it's not your turn. It's the only deck in the game that can really do that effectively, is double Rally for 5 mana with Taric. So I think Taric is kind of a problem. If you just let him stick there, he will run away. Not quite run away with the game, but he's got some mean combo potential for sure. Next up is Yasuo. I do believe that after the Steel Gale release, that Yasuo is kind of a problem. I think you kind of sleep on Yasuo at your own peril. I think Yasuo is much better than he used to be. And it is a case of, like, just the deck getting better and better. At first we had no way to get Yasuo, then we got Yasuo Boat, and now we have Steel Gale, which is just a more reliable stun, and it's a double stun effect for double procs. So again, it's 3 mana versus 4 mana for Palm. We used to have Palm, which is 4 mana. Steel Gale is 3 mana, and it procs twice. So again, Yasuo's kind of a problem when he can start eating, like, 10/10s, right? At that point, I'm starting to say that Yasuo is a real card. If you can eat a 10/10 for 3 mana, that's pretty good. Zed is kind of a problem. Again, Zed leveled, you'll never see it, but just in terms of what he does, it's a problem, because there's so much ephemeral synergy with Zed that he is always kind of a problem when he gets to live for even one attack. If you can't just instantly stop him from attacking, he is kind of a problem. Very similar, for the exact same reasons, is going to be Poppy, right? So in an aggro shell or go wide shell, Poppy gets one attack and she just buffs everything, and that's why Zed Poppy is one of the best aggro decks in the game, because, a House Spire being a 2/2 and a 1/1, it's now a 3/3 and a 2/2, but except it's, you're 6 wide. So obviously Poppy attacking is kind of a problem. I think Gnar is kind of a problem. And a lot of that has to do with the buff to transform decks. So transform decks have steadily gotten better. And I think, I don't know, I had to choose between Gnar or Nidalee. They're both in the same deck, so I had to choose between Gnar and Nidalee. And yeah, I think I chose Gnar as the slightly more competitive version, but I'll just hit both at once and just say that they're in the same deck. It is the newly buffed transform deck. I think Nidalee and Gnar are decent. Next up, it's Jarvan. I think Jarvan's kind of a problem. He is one of the easiest champions in the game to level, more so than any other champion in the game. All you have to do is have 3 allies survive, or have any number of allies survive 3 strikes when you're attacking from enemy blockers, and that's exceptionally easy to do. So, and then he's just like an infinite removal engine. So I've always loved Jarvan. I think he is kind of a problem and always will be. Next up we have, do I have Vex here as well? No. Again, the rankings are pretty close. Vex is a good card, but he's not quite there. I think out of the 2 cards, if I had to say which is more of a problem, it is Kindred. So I still think Kindred is in Eternal, where you have so much removal synergy. I think Kindred is better than, is a little bit better in the mid-range shell. So I think Kindred's kind of a problem. He definitely goes in that tier. Speeding it up, we do have Jhin, right? So Jhin is kind of a problem. The weaker part of the anti-Jhin package, providing the burn and the skill procs for free, but still definitely kind of a problem. He's similar to Eddie in the sense that, like, Eddie can function anywhere in the deck. Jhin can function in hand, so that makes him powerful. He can do what he needs to do in hand without being played, or you can play him if you want to go for it. Rek'Sai has kind of a problem. Again, you never really know what a crazy Lurk player is going to do, right? Like, a Lurk player might run like a strange Make It Rain. They might run some sort of buff for Rek'Sai to get him to 10 power faster. So again, Rek'Sai is always a problem as long as there is a potential that he is leveling. So he's definitely kind of a problem. And he obviously even functions while he's in deck, similar to like an Eddie. He is kind of like a worse version of Eddie, or the prototype of Eddie, if you will. Then we have Jace being kind of a problem. Again, there's a lot of flexibility with how you run Jace. You have Jace Lux, which is good, and then you have Jace Heimer, which I think is probably still quite playable. So definitely kind of a problem. Speeding things up a little faster, we have Ziggs. Ziggs is kind of a problem. Again, staple aggro card, good body, so it's almost a blocking Badger Bear with a skill proc. Like, that's really all it needs to be. And then when it levels, it's good for synergy-based decks as well. Nora is kind of a problem. I don't really need to explain why Nora is so good, but Nora is exceptionally strong. And essentially just providing infinite token potential. So she just, sometimes she RNGs really hard, and other games she's just stopping your aggressive attempts to beat out the deck on board before the control player can kind of hit that critical mass of chumpers to stop you. So Nora helps you hit that critical mass of chumpers just by turn 2, right? She swings on turn 2 and you're already facing down problems. Your game is already worse off than it was before she swung on turn 2. So Nora is definitely kind of a problem as soon as she gets played. I think Victor's kind of a problem. Again, high RNG champion. I'm not going to lie, but I consider Victor to be kind of a problem. I've had, hilarious games with Victor where, I'm running Victor Undir, and I really like Victor Undir, and then, of course, you slam the stances on Victor, and then all of a sudden Victor's like an OTK piece that's even, like, comes down one turn earlier than Undir, so in that sense, he's actually more of a problem than Undir. I believe I've also included Undir in this tier, and yeah, they're both kind of a problem, so I'll include Undir there as well. I think Undir or Victor, either one, or both together, which I personally think is optimal. I think both of them are kind of a problem. They are the grow tall decks, and don't get me wrong, I don't think that putting all your eggs in one basket will, always be the best course of action, but when it is the right course of action, I think it's very good. So yeah, definitely kind of a problem. Along those same lines, we have Gwen. So again, talking about putting your stats in one basket, Gwen is very much a go tall kind of champion. Now, she functions a little differently because she almost has like a death rattle effect, but fundamentally the idea is the same, is that she swings for big damage, and then one other unit swings for big damage. So she spreads out the stats a little bit more, so she's probably more competitive than Victor or Undir, but yeah, Gwen's definitely kind of a problem. I've actually got Lucian here. Believe it or not, I think there's actually enough tools in Eternal where Lucian can like do work. Like, I've seen every single time Lucian flips, I'm just scared. Like, Lucian is a scary card in any sort of Shadow Isle shell where he can just like insta flip in certain scenarios, and then now he's just like an infinite rally piece for 1 mana. Like, he's kind of a problem, I'm not gonna lie. And then I have Nidalee. Nidalee being the weaker part of the Temple deck. Sorry, Nilla, not Nidalee. Nilla being the weaker part of the Temple deck, but she's still kind of a problem. Now, I can't, I'm going to cover the other tiers in another video, because again, I'll have to break this into 2 parts because it's going to be too long otherwise. But those were the first 2 tiers, so S tier, A tier, and Eddie tier. And then I'll be covering the lower tiers next, so stay tuned for that. This is Eternal King, signing out.